Bienvenue Power Bottoms. Welcome everyone to my very first modeling video where I'm going to be modeling the idol, one of my favorite idols, Yeosang from the Halazia music video. I'm gonna try to explain my whole process and guide everyone along. We're gonna go from a beautiful K-pop idol to a hopefully also very pretty 3D model. So let's start. So first, the very first thing I always try to do is to come up with a sketch where you can see the figure that I want to do. Here I'm compiling all of the references of his face using the app PureRef so that I can have everything I need while I model. I am compiling also the different views for his outfit and everything. And here I'm going to try to explain the tools that I use and why I use them. These are my favorite ones, the ones that they're basically it. That's everything I'm gonna use, really. So I start out always with using the move tool to start carving out the shape of his head. I started with a sphere first. I'm turning the face around so I can get all of the angles. And I'm going to be trying to explain things like basics from Zbrush, so you can divide everything that you work on under geometry. And what this does is it's basically it doubles the polygon count on your mesh. So you can see a difference here while I switch from the high res and the low res. What this does is that basically you can move the mesh easier when it has a lower count of polygons versus when it has a higher one. You need the higher res for details, but you don't really need them while you're blocking out the shapes. You can change it always using the C remeasure button. Basically, whenever you make a very big change in the shape of each element of each tool in ZBrush, you want to be C remeshing so that the mesh molds better to the new shape that you carved, and it's easier to move around. I'm using the clay buildup tool to add volume to his cheeks and move around his features. I'm using a tube and another sphere to make the torso too. Here I'm making an ear, and I'm going to be showing you how to mirror a tool. So you go to C plugin and mirror, and you can choose which axis to do the mirroring on. That way you have two ears that are perfectly symmetrical. Also, if you want to have symmetry on all your shapes, just press the X key on your keyboard. So here I'm starting to carve out his nose, the space for his eyes, where I want things to be. So using the control key, I'm making a mask on where I will want his eyes to be, and then clicking outside of the model so that I can invert the mask, and then I can use the move tool to just push the shape of the eyes in. I'm adding another shape for the eyes, another sphere, and I'll be mirroring it just like I did the ears. I'm adding shapes for the eyebrows. I would do this differently now, but I'll explain in a little bit why. This is where it's very important to trust the process, because your model is going to look very ugly for a very big while you push in everything and make sure that it looks like your references. So trust the process. It's not going to end up looking like this. Don't worry. So here I am adding color to the eyes because I feel like it's very easy to not be able to know how it's going to look at the end, and it helps to have the irises in place. So you just have to go to poly paint and colorize, and then you open your standard brush make it so that it paints on RGB and it doesn't add information, and then you can just color the shape of the irises. That way you have like a better idea of what it's gonna look like. Yes, remember to make up multiple copies always, because sometimes you like make a lot of changes and then you're probably not going to end up liking them. And it's good to have backup copies so that you can go back to a certain point and make better choices. Here I'm showing you how I do lips. I like to add a rectangle for the lip shape, so that I can have an actual like crisp edge to the lip line. I'm adding 2 of them, mirroring them, and then I can just move the lip line correctly. You can push in the philtrum and make sure everything is lined up correctly to your reference, and then using the in-flat brush you can sort of inflate a certain part, so that's how I make the lips look full. Once you have each lip correctly done, you can merge the face and the lips together and then do a dynamesh so that you can join them into one shape. Here I'm adding details to the ear, carving everything out, making sure that it lines up to my references. His nose was probably the hardest part to do because he has such a distinct nose shape, so I made sure to get it right. Here I joined the neck to the back so I can like really sculpt the back muscles because they're going to be seen. And here I added my references to the screen so you can see what I'm looking at while I'm working on it. I'm switching between my reference of his profile so that I can get everything right. Adding shape to his cheekbones. I switched out the way I had colored the eyes. And here I'm adding the eyelashes. And also painting them black. Then I make the base for what his hair is going to be using another sphere, moving in and pushing it around. And I'm adding the bangs on like separate pieces so it's easier to control. I would do this differently now, but this is how I did it before. I just pushed around. I pushed it around. I'm adding little streaks for like strands of hair for it to look very pretty and like my sketch. And yeah, I got laid off in the beginning of the year. And then right afterwards, I got a new job as a 3D modeler. So I have very different techniques that I'm going to start to make here, to do here. So here I'm going to do booleans for the eyes, and I'm going to explain it in a second. Basically what a boolean is like adding or subtracting from your mesh using another mesh. So here you can see I'm making another circle that will like cut into the other eye that we already had, making sure that I have live boolean on and it's on subtract, then making another one for the pupil, one for the iris, and then I'm adding another sphere for just the eye shine. That one can be on a positive boolean, just on an add boolean. And this works very well. And I learned it at my job because I work as a modeler for printing models. So when you're printing something, it's way better to have it as actual geometry, not just painted on. So yeah, I'm gonna continue working on the hair, inflating it, adding details, moving it around. I make sure to have the shapes right before I going and divide it and have like a bigger geometry and making like the details, of course, because once you have like a lot of geometry and a lot of details, like deforming it is very hard. So make sure you have your shapes right first, and then you can add details. I'm using cylinders for the arms. And I'm starting to sculpt the pecs and the back. The pecs are gonna be very high definition because they show through his shirt. And here I'm showing you sort of like what I reference a lot for the divisions of like the parts of your model, so that it's easier for you to post it later on. This is why I have these sections, like the torso and the like waist is another part, and then the actual hips are another part, so that when you like post it around, it's easier for you to move. And then I'm adding shapes for each part of the body and mirroring them. Always have your anatomical model handy. It's very easy to get lost on what something's supposed to look like. Here I'm showing you how I'm making hands. It's basically just rectangles that I subdivide, and here I make masks and switch the masks and then just rotate each like part of the finger. And once you have one really good finger, I can polish it, I can add the details of the creases of the finger, and using again the inflat tool to give it like a roundness. Make sure the edges are not too harsh. And then we can just duplicate this one finger that we made, 404. Switching the proportions, of course. I wasn't too happy with the fingertip, I guess, and then decided to do the other ones. I edited that and then again made the fingers again, just duplicating that original one.
T26 끝.
Okay, here I'm actually adding more details and I'm starting to make the shapes of the clothes. I'm showing you one of the things that I learned at my job, where you use the gizmo tool and do a deformer hard. This way you can move each vertex on the shape. I am selecting them with a mask and switching the selection so I can move them. This way I can do like a more precise deformation of the shape. And then I can sculpt normally. I'm adding shapes again, as the same way I did the eyes. I'm subtracting meshes from the shape of his shirt. My favorite part to do always are the clothing creases. I have a lot of fun with those. I'm adding his armbands. Making sure everything is in place. Here I wanted to show you one way to add like geometry on your face using the topology tool. You can draw out like the shape that you want to extract from your mesh, selecting the face. And this is how, just clicking outside of the topology that you drew, you can just extract the shape. This is how I made his birthmark. I'm going to start speeding up here because these are just like, I just use the elements that I already taught you, but here I'm showing you the deformation, the curve tool, also under the gizmo. This is how I made all of the details on his choker. I can duplicate those and mirror them, and then add the rings to the choker. And then for the chains, I am using an IMM tool that I downloaded from ArtStation. I will link the artist's store on my bio, so you can go check it out. Same for the beads, the necklace beads. And then for the feathers, this is how I did them. Again, using the deformer hard, I'm pulling in the shapes. And then I can just zero mesh and add the details. Start actually sculpting them. And then using the curve tool to give it like a roundness. And then I can just duplicate it and putting around his torso. Same for the skirt, I just modeled it and then used negative booleans for the slits on the sides of the skirt. Using clay buildup to add most of the creases on the clothes. And same for the parts of the pants. I'm just adding details now. Here I'm showing how I made the shackles using, again, mostly the booleans. So I'm adding shapes and subtracting them and making it a boolean mesh once I'm done and have everything together. Then I can just duplicate it for each hand because he's shackled on both. And once you have everything modeled, you can start posing them. So what I do is I merge like parts of the body together, so the head, the torso, and then the legs. And once you start like having the bigger shapes right, you can split your subtools and then actually pose part by part. I'm gonna speed through this because it's a bit tedious and it's a long process. But yeah, you're just moving around everything you did, and once you have everything in like your right place, you can dynamesh the parts that you would want to be just one, so you don't have any harsh edges. And yeah, my favorite part is just starting to add paint again with the poly paint option. You colorize and then you just start painting, go to town. The cool thing about booleans is that if once you have like made this like indent in your mesh of sorts, you can split it in groups and you'll have each part of that boolean separated. It makes it easier to color. just like in the eyes. I'm going to show it in a second. The iris and the pupil is going to be separate because of how I made the boolean. And yeah, you just paint away, and we're gonna be able to see the finished model very soon. I'm very excited for you guys to see. I think it's my best piece yet. Thank you so much for watching the video and for sitting for such a long one. I hope that showing my process can sort of demystify ZBrush for people that want to start out using it. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Make sure to follow me on my socials that are going to be linked below. And thank you so much.